Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14, presented by Stakes, here to do our power rankings for SEC basketball. It is the morning of January the 2nd. Conference play has started. And Blake, we always start from the bottom. And this team stands alone, kind of in its own tier. The South Carolina Gamecocks, whom the computers just do not like. A lot of rankings in the 200s nationally, where there's every other team in the conference is getting top 100 selections, I guess is a good way to put it, whatever you say for a computer. But anyway, the Gamecocks, number 14 in our rankings by a considerable margin.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have anything to say. I mean, they've been here for over a month, maybe month and a half now. We've said the same thing every week, so it's like nothing's changed in my opinion. They've beaten Western Kentucky, which was a solid win, but I mean, I don't really know what else to say. I mean, it's the same stuff. I mean, yeah, I guess
Offensively challenged.
Instead of repeating myself, yeah, I mean they're number 14 and they have a chance to move to number 13 if they win on Tuesday against Vanderbilt. Like they can swap, but I mean that's it. Like that's probably the most you can say right now. Other than like you said, they didn't get a solid win against Western Kentucky, but Western Kentucky's also lost 4 in a row. So I don't know.
Yeah, beating Vanderbilt, which is our 13th team in the countdown, could move the Gamecocks up. Vanderbilt looked a little better in a tune-up game against Southeastern Louisiana, but I just that to me looks like a season going nowhere. The Commodores are barely top 100 in all the major computers, so there's that. So there's a good gap between them and Carolina, according to the computers, and I think that's right too. I think Vandy's going to be probably 11 or 12-point favorite when these teams play on Tuesday. But anyway, we've got Vandy at 13. Now, here's a surprise. We've got Georgia leaping Texas A&M at 11, the Aggies at 12. I think A&M, there's been some disappointing teams in the league so far. A&M, I think, probably your most disappointing team so far compared to preseason expectations. Some people had them as a top 25 team. I didn't quite see it. That's how it's playing out, although I didn't think it would be this bad. And Georgia now at 10-3. I know the Bulldogs have not beaten anybody really of consequence. Not any great wins at least, but we had a flip there at 11, which was a little surprising.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean a whole lot at this point. I mean, Georgia hasn't played a conference game. A&M hasn't played a conference game, so it's like, it's still 2 teams that played. I mean, below average non-conference schedules. So, like, I still don't think there's a lot you can really take away from much of it. But other than the fact that, like we said, Georgia has 10 wins and they had 6 last season. A&M missing something, and we'll probably start to find out, a little bit clearer picture of what that is as they get into SEC play. So.
Number 10, we've got Ole Miss. We had a little bit of a difference of opinion on Ole Miss, but I don't think either had the Rebels too far from where we got them at 10. Ole Miss played a pretty competitive game. I think led Tennessee in the second half at Oxford. This game always seems to be, as you said, a rock fight between two defensive-minded programs. We've got the Rebels at 10 and Florida at 9. The computers all have Florida in the top 50. I just do not see it with them. I mean, and I've been the Florida defender here on the podcast for a couple of years, but anytime the Gators play anybody, they lose. It would take, I think, at this point, a minor miracle for Florida to make the NCAA tournament. It's going to have to start beating good teams, which it's not done so far.
Yeah, that's the computers, right? It's
right.
Hey, if you play a bunch of hard teams and you lose
I have
to
some
all
issues
of them,
with the computers
then,
at this point.
yeah, I'm just saying. I mean, it's like, hey, congratulations for playing a bunch of hard teams, but even though you haven't won any of them, we're still going to reward you by moving you ahead of these teams. And I think that's the limitations of just doing it from that standpoint. But yes, I mean, have they started playing better? I think yes, Florida's playing better, but the fact is, they've played a pretty tough schedule at this point. Let's not, like I said, let's not ignore that because, I mean, they have played a pretty tough slate. When you consider that all 6 of their losses are to top 35 Ken Palm teams. Some of those losses have been closer than others. But like I said, I mean, they were right there with a chance at Auburn. And, aside from the UConn and West Virginia games, I mean, they've they've had their opportunities in these games. They just haven't been able to get over that hump and win one of these. And we'll see kind of if that changes in the future, because it's not going to change here in the near future, because their next two games are against A&M and Georgia, which are two teams you think they should beat. But then after that, they go to LSU. They got Missouri. So um, yeah, we'll see if they can start to get some wins that actually mean something. Because as of right now, as we said before, they don't have an NCAA tournament resume, because they don't have a win that's even close to supporting that. So they've got to start finding those wins, and that's a product of, it's not just that you have to avoid the bad losses too, because they've already got losses to every good team they played. They have to avoid the losses to an A&M or Georgia or teams like that, and they've got to find a way to rack up a lot of wins. Which, as we talked about with their schedule before, they don't have a ton of those opportunities. Which I know sounds crazy after just one SEC game, but if you really look down their schedule right now, they don't play one of the tougher SEC slates, and so yeah, they've got a lot of ground to make up.
Here's the issue with Florida, or one of the issues. Colin Castleton started out the year like a house on fire, maybe even a National Player of the Year candidate type resume. I mean, he goes, 33 points in a win over Kennesaw State, 30 in a win over FAU, and 25 in a win over Florida State. Or excuse me, that's 33, 30, and 25. I might have gotten confused with the minutes played. But since then, Blake, 9 games, he has exceeded 12 points in those games once. That was the loss to Oklahoma back on December the 20th. There's your problem. I mean, one of your problems is that I don't know if teams have figured out how to defend Colin Castleton or what's going on, but Florida's got to get him going again to have the kind of season that it hoped to have. And I think there were certainly some founded hopes for an NCAA tournament bid potentially with this bunch.
Yeah, I mean, the more he's involved, the better it is. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So we'll see if they can get there. I just think right now, I think it's a lot to ask of a team that, like I said, to this point, just has not been able to beat a good team yet. And so I think it's, we're in January, so I think it's a lot to ask. But I also don't think it's that surprising that they, first year coach, a lot of new faces. They're working through some of the same stuff that some of these other teams are. So, yep, we'll see with the Gators.
Before we get to the rest of our countdown, a shout to our presenting sponsor, Stakes. Predict sports better than the crowd for a chance to win NFTs. With Stakes, players can submit their sports predictions against friends, other fans, and influencers forever. Don't let your sports genius go overlooked. Join Stakes and have the best predictions captured in the moment. Go to playwithstakes.com/14. Use our invite code Southeastern14 for a double welcome bonus. We'll be hopping in there and putting some predictions up on games here in the coming days. Okay, Blake, next we get to a tier where it gets a little harder to sort out in my mind, although I think we both were pretty unanimous on LSU. The Tigers, the number 8 team in our countdown, one of 2 one-loss teams in the SEC, and kind of the opposite of Florida, have not played a lot of really good teams yet. But LSU got a huge win last week at home over Arkansas. And yes, we know Arkansas had some injuries and some things. But LSU riding KJ Williams right now, who is going to be on that short list of player of the year in the league right now if you're making picks.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, LSU didn't really move much in our rankings. I don't think they moved at all. But again, that's not a product of just one game, which we always try to say.
Yeah.
They don't automatically just move up to number 3 or something just after winning, a game against Arkansas. But, the overall picture of things, I think that they're still, I said as of right now, I mean, they're moving in the right direction, because all the talk, and I said I don't think we're giving LSU enough credit. Like I was a little bit higher on them, I think, than most were after that non-conference slate, which I know was not that impressive from a resume standpoint. But it's just a team that finds a way to win close games. I mean, I said that too in one of our recent videos, and said there's something to that. Doesn't matter who you play, if you just find a way to win a lot of close games, that can really help you once you get into this kind of schedule. Which, again, one of the tougher first halves of an FCC schedule we probably had in many years, and they're 1-0. So in that regard, so I think it's a great start. Now, 3 of their next 4 are on the road. They go to Kentucky, A&M, Alabama, got Florida at home in there. Um, So yeah, I mean it's a pretty brutal stretch all the way really through, February 8th where they're at Mississippi State. So yeah, we'll see if they can continue to rack up these wins because they need it for a tournament resume. But for now, a very confident group that just finds ways to win and doesn't always have to be pretty from start to finish, but they keep finding ways to win. And I have no doubt that they'll continue to move up as they, have an opportunity to win more of these games.
Mississippi State, sort of in that same boat, played a well, I say that. I'd forgotten they'd beaten Marquette and Utah. But other than that, didn't play much in the way of competition. State now on a 2-game slide after losing to Drake and Lincoln, Nebraska, and then to Alabama last week in Starkville. Big game with Tennessee coming up on the road this week, and then a home game with Ole Miss. But State's kind of stayed in this middle ground here for a couple of weeks. And again, very defensive-minded team, number 6 in the country, and adjusted offensive efficiency. The offensive portion for the Bulldogs is the difficult part.
Yep, and we'll talk about their game on Tuesday against Tennessee. That will be all about defense.
Rock
And
fight.
I think when you look at kind of where they're at, yeah, I mean it's disappointing to have a 2-game losing streak, but in all honesty, a lot of us probably would have never expected them to be 11-2 if we would have made our predictions, in the 1st of November. So they are though, and they do have a couple nice wins. They said Marquette and Utah, and I mean, look, Alabama's Alabama, and we'll be talking about them in a minute. But yeah, I think disappointing to lose the Drake game, but now they're kind of in the same picture. Is they just got to keep finding wins and avoiding bad losses because as of right now they don't have a lot of either in terms of good wins, bad losses. But that that's a good thing and a bad thing. They just need more of the good stuff, and I think that's they'll have their opportunities because you look at their schedule. They play a pretty nice SEC schedule, but the offense is definitely something that worries you a little bit as they get into some of these games, especially teams that can certainly put up some points like an Alabama, which it wasn't a Alabama scoring 90, but when you get against teams like that, it's just can you find enough offense, because your defense almost has to be perfect, and we'll see if they can get there.
We had some issues with Kentucky. We've had them for a few weeks. The Cats go to Missouri and get stomped. Rebound with the 23-point win over Louisville, which is barely inside the 200 in KenPom, or barely inside the top 300, that is. I don't think beating Louisville teaches us anything about the Cats. Kentucky probably still doesn't have a win over a team that's going to the NCAA tournament unless Yale were to win the Ivy. We're just kind of where we've been on the Cats now for 2 or 3 weeks, unless you've got something different to add here.
No, if you've watched our other videos, you know where we stand on Kentucky. Nothing's changed. Yeah, I mean, beating Louisville in recent in other years, sure, we'd be talking a lot more about it right now, but everybody knows where Louisville's at, and I just don't really think it teaches you a whole lot because against the bad teams, Kentucky's been really good, but against the good teams, except for Michigan, right? I mean, it's just been it's
And
just been that way.
Michigan's not an NCAA tournament team at this point. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and Yale just lost to Columbia. Columbia's 336 in KenPom.
Ooh.
So, those are the kind of things that as you're building a resume that you don't love. So yeah, I mean, it's Michigan just blew out Maryland, which that'll help them a bit. But other than the Michigan game, there's just not a lot to support, a fine Kentucky like season just yet. They're 9-4. And so big opportunities coming up. LSU, Alabama this week. So if they can win both of those, then maybe they're starting to turn a corner. But it still goes back to the offensive play against good teams, not just against bad teams. And the defense, as we said, slipped a little bit, especially at Missouri. And so there's still questions, I think, across the board for the Cats.
All right, ESPN's BPI last week had Kentucky with, I think, a 99% chance to make the NCAA tournament. That was before the Louisville game, which I wouldn't presume changed it much one way or the other. I'm not buying 99%. I don't know what the figure is, but it's not that, is it?
No, it's not 99%. That is
What
not the
is it,
case
maybe
right now.
75, 80?
I mean, the number itself, I think, is irrelevant other than the fact that it's not a lock. I think that's probably
Right.
just the best way to put it. Like I don't because again, it's like, you know, they've played 5 top 50 teams in KenPom. They've lost 4 of them. And so if that trend continues, I'm not saying
And
they'll lose
Michigan
every
is
one of them.
barely in there.
Yeah, and said Michigan helped themselves by beating Maryland the way they did. Um, yeah, like it's just there's not an. I mean, as I said, Michigan's another team. Like they lost at home to Central Michigan, right? And then they turn around and beat Maryland by 35. And so
Well,
it's just kind
Maryland's
of one
had
of
some
those.
weird results.
Yeah. Um, I don't know. No, Kentucky's not a 99% chance to make the tournament. Not even close because they've, as we said, we can only go off of what we've seen, and what we've seen is a team that against good teams can just stall out offensively. And if that continues to be the case, yes, I think there's a lot more good. I think there's a lot more great defensive teams in the SEC than there is great offensive teams. So, which could help Kentucky in a sense because that means, they're not really running into a lot of offensive juggernauts outside of Alabama, Missouri, maybe throw Arkansas in there. But that's probably about it, in all honesty. So, in a sense, that can maybe help them a little bit. But until they start winning some of these games consistently, there's no trust, in my opinion, that you feel are confident they can make the tournament as a lock. No.
The lone tie in our countdown is next up. Before we get there, I want to tell you about our new sponsors, BROTHROW. If you don't like betting, betting $11 to win 10. BROTHROW is a place you need to visit. It lets you bet on all 50 states. It's not the house, so bettors have a fair chance at winning. It's the only sports platform that doesn't take a cut of every bet. No deposits, no minimum bets, no need to connect your bank account. Bettors pay each other directly. It's a hassle-free sign-up process that gets you in the action in seconds. Go to brothrow.com/SE14. Sign up with that code. And when you're there, ask to join our group under Southeastern 14. We'll build a nice little community of people. We can make some small wagers against each other and have some fun doing it. So help out the folks who help our podcast. I think you're going to love BROTHROW, and we certainly do. Okay, and we have a tie at 4 between Missouri and Auburn. I had Missouri higher than Auburn in this one. I mean, who knows? There's a lot of ball to play. But Missouri is one of the better offensive teams in the country, which Kentucky found out last week. Auburn's still having issues with its guards and shooting the ball. But, you never really bet against Bruce Pearl. The Tigers are a top 25 team by all the computers. I think still ranked this week. So that one will play out. But that's very interesting because two teams that started the year in different places and are now kind of in the same group.
Yep. As I always say, I always feel like I have to keep my Missouri confidence in check. And so, like, surprisingly, if I'm the low man on Missouri, it's because I'm trying not to go too far. Um, even though if you've watched our stuff, I like to do that sometimes. But no, I mean Missouri's
I
got the
try. I
better.
tried to talk you into making them an NCAA tournament team in preseason, and I couldn't get you there.
Yeah, but I was right
You were
there, and
close.
most people were not even close. So I would like to take some credit for that. Like I did say they're the sleeper team probably in the league because of the roster and how good it looked going into it. But yes, I mean Missouri's resume is better than Auburn's. Like I mean, there's if you're just comparing resumes, Missouri's resumes
They're
are
an
better.
NCAA tournament team today if it starts.
Well, they're
Yeah,
an easy
easily.
lock of a yeah, like they're a lock today. But if we're just comparing the two together, then Auburn's best win right now is probably I don't know Florida, Northwestern, one of those two. I mean, Missouri has beaten back to
Wow.
back Illinois, Kentucky. Um, you know, got it. Yeah. So I mean, again, it's kind of that situation where you look at kind of the resumes, and I agree. Like I think Missouri has the better resume, but I think the one thing that we keep doing this with Auburn. I know they've had offensive struggles, but we cannot ignore the fact that they are one of the better defensive teams in the country,
Yeah,
and
they get after you.
it's the same conversation we have about Tennessee sometimes. Not saying Auburn's Tennessee, but I don't think we could just sit back and I do it a lot. I know. I mean, it is what it is at this point. I don't think they're not all of a sudden gonna magically become a 90-point a game type team, but their defense is still good enough to win a lot of games. And they're just so good on that side of the floor that it'll make their offense easier. And so I'm not again, it hasn't been pretty at times for Auburn. This is not the same team as last year. It's not the same team as several years ago, but they still have a lot of pieces in place to win a lot of games. And so um, I just think they're going to run into some of those games sometimes though, where if their defense is not flawless or close to it, they may struggle a little bit, especially in close games where they need a big shot or they need to hit free throws. Those kind of things matter, and taking care of the ball and all that. So yeah, that's it on the Auburn front. Missouri front, like I said, I don't want to. If you've watched our videos before, you know where I stand on Missouri. I think that their offense is good enough to beat anybody. They've proven that past couple games convincingly against Illinois and Kentucky, and now they get ready for a big road trip at Arkansas, and this is one of the most confident teams in the country right now. And yeah, I mean they are certainly headed in the right direction.
We get to Arkansas at 3, and I feel like it's just been the same thing every day with them recently. This is a good team. You had the Brazil injury. Now you got the mystery of Nick Smith, and I don't know what else to add at this point. Arkansas goes and loses in the final minute at LSU, which I think has to ding the Razorbacks a little bit. But as we say, Arkansas started conference play 0-3 last year. You got to take that into consideration, and then I don't even know what to say about Smith anymore.
Well, you got to put a team somewhere, and it's like,
Right.
what were we
I
going to
mean, look,
do?
and they're still plenty good if Nick Smith doesn't play again, right?
Well, and here's the thing, and I know some people are like, well, he had Arkansas at 3 last week, and they lost, and they stayed at 3. Well, once again, like this
Who's
is
better?
this is a not a one game sample size. It's a bigger picture type thing, and the problem is I didn't feel comfortable moving Arkansas behind, Missouri or Auburn just yet. And
I
so
think there's a pretty good gap between these 3 and the ones behind them.
mm, I think Missouri's getting there.
Missouri's getting there, but
I mean, here's the deal, right? Like, who else has back-to-back blowout wins over?
well, you might be right about that.
I would move, and look, and that's what I said. Like, I still am probably more confident about Auburn than most people are. I think there are a lot of people who have jumped off the Auburn bandwagon. Like I said, I have my issues with their offense and being able to win a 90-80 game, but I think their defense is still to the point to where they're going to frustrate some teams, and I think they have a pretty nice schedule, so that helps. Um, I don't know that there's that huge of a gap between the top 3 and maybe, like I said, a couple teams behind it. I don't think Kentucky's in that equation right now. That's why we have them at 6. But I think in the right scenario, I think Missouri, because again, I mean they got one loss, and that's to Kansas, and they just didn't really show up defensively. But if you look at their last
They
2
did it
games,
in Kentucky.
yeah, that's why I wouldn't. But I know what
Yeah.
you're saying, and I get it. But I mean, overall, like I said, I didn't feel like Arkansas should drop that much, even though they lost to LSU. They have 2 losses on the year, both by 3 points, basically come down to the wire in both games. And, they're without 2 of their best players. They're going to be without one of them for the entire season the rest of the way. The other one, we just don't know. But yeah, talk about their schedule, right? At LSU, now they got Missouri at home, at Auburn, home against Alabama. Could Arkansas theoretically be 0-4? Sure. Is it probably going to be that way? I don't think so. But given the competition, sure. Um, but I think they're going to be fine. It's just right now, that's a tough game to open up league play against a confident team that's won a lot of close games. And so I'm not overly concerned with Arkansas. So
Well, I say again, the computers are seeing a gap. The major computers have all got Arkansas inside the top 15. None of them, the 4 that I look at, have got Missouri any higher than 33. No, look, I don't believe that. I'm with you. I think there's a less gap, but you've seen some funny stuff with computer numbers so far. I think you've got a lot of preseason stuff baked in. Certainly at KenPom, his does not move out. His preseason stuff doesn't move out entirely until January the 23rd. So that's probably holding some teams back and propping some teams up. And when I say propping teams up, I'm mostly talking about Kentucky. But there's my sidebar for why there's a perception gap between some of these teams.
Yeah, I'm past the computer stuff at this point because when I see
You're
some of
never
these
a computer
teams
guy anyway.
when
Yeah.
I see some of these teams play, I can tell you that the number to the left on the computers does not match their
Yeah.
output. So
You're crazy if you think there's 30 teams better than Missouri at this point. But we'll start seeing that
well,
factor in probably here in a
you're
few
also
weeks.
if you think Kentucky's the 14th best
Yes,
team in the country,
agreed.
it's probably not the case either. So
Yeah, this
sorry,
is
but
why
it's
we
not.
watch basketball.
Yeah.
Okay, we got Tennessee at 2 and Alabama at 1. All the computers have Tennessee higher than Alabama. We just disagree. I think Alabama's offensive upside and maybe having the best player in the league is where we differ. But the Vols don't give up points to much of anybody outside Arizona, and yeah, I mean they'll play that one out before too long.
Yeah, I mean this is where when you have teams that are this close together, this is where you can actually read into the most recent game. Most recent game Alabama went and won at Mississippi State and played well there. Hard place to win. Tennessee, I think, found a way to win at Ole Miss. Another hard place to play. So it's like, you just kind of leave them where they are. And we've had Alabama 1 and Tennessee 2 for a while now, I guess. And so yeah, there's not really a whole lot of reason to move them at this point. So yeah, I think this is probably where we have where I think the least argument is made in terms of one,
Our
two.
top three have been our top three for what 3 or 4
Right.
weeks
Yeah.
now.
And I don't want to leave Arkansas out of that. Yeah, you're right. It's just I
Well,
think
they are in the top 3. Yeah,
yeah, no, and that's what I mean. Like I'm saying, like I was talking about specifically Alabama and Tennessee. Like yes, we shouldn't leave Arkansas out of the discussion here, but I think to me, the Alabama Tennessee discussion has probably been a bit more 1-2 than it has Arkansas 1 or 2
yeah,
right now. And I think
yeah.
we had Arkansas at
I would
1
agree.
a while back, right? But I think it's pretty set right now unless something goes, south with Alabama and Tennessee. I think that they're probably sitting right here, in pretty good spots. And that's what I said they're going to flip opponents next, right? Because Alabama plays Ole Miss, Tennessee plays Mississippi State. So if you want to compare and contrast, you'll be able to do that after 2 games in SEC play. But yeah, I think these are the top 2 teams, and still of the opinion Alabama has the highest upside of anybody in the league,
Yeah, me
just
too.
based on what we've seen. And we'll see if that continues to be the case moving forward.
Yeah, if you want to tell me that we got it wrong and Tennessee should be 1 and Alabama should be 2, I won't argue a lot with you. Computer rankings: Ken Palm, Tennessee 3, Alabama 9. Bart Torvik, Tennessee 3, Alabama 12. Sagarin, Tennessee 4, Alabama 11, and BPI, Tennessee 2, Alabama 11. Again, we watch a lot of these teams. I just think the difference, and you speak for yourself if I'm wrong here, but I think the difference is we trust Alabama to get buckets more than we do Tennessee, and we like both of them defensively.
Yeah, I mean Alabama's better defensively, but of course they're not Tennessee defensively.
Well,
And
Tennessee's better. Yeah, right. Yeah.
yeah, I mean that's Alabama's better defensively in relation to where they were last season, and they're still I think they're right there on that elite defensive team discussion. I think that you can certainly make that case at times. Other times not, as we saw with the Zags, but sometimes, as we said, that's just a product of the other team. But yeah, I mean, I don't, yeah, no, I'd be fine with that. If you want to argue Tennessee won, that's fine. But like I said, they'll play each other eventually, and we'll see who can kind of stay on the same trajectory moving forward. But when you compare like schedules and stuff, I mean, both have played a tough schedule, but I mean, Alabama's played the toughest schedule. I don't, I don't have a lot of hesitation on that when you look at the teams they played. So yeah, it's take your pick on what you value more. I just think Tennessee, the offensive numbers are what they are, and I think Alabama's a more balanced team from that standpoint. They're an elite offensive team. They're right there defensively. Tennessee, I think, is an elite defensive team. I think they're a good offensive team, but I don't think they're just not to that next level. And we're not saying anything we haven't said before. So, but they just keep winning, right? So, yeah, I mean, you're talking about comparing 2 teams that, in all honesty, you're talking about comparing 2 teams that like have top 2 seed, resumes and potential right now.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I mean, so it's not like
Well,
there's
and
that
you
much of
don't make final judgments on teams the first week of January. I think, to me, Blake, you tell me if I'm wrong, when I really start feeling confident. I mean, there's some exceptions, obviously. Like, I don't think we're going to get to February and say Tennessee's not a tournament team or something like that. But I think when I really start to feel like I know what a team is once you get into mid-February. It starts to make a little bit more sense. Teams that have some issues, those start to get exposed a little bit more. That, to me, is when you really start, and that by that time teams have started to play. You have some teams that, by scheduling quirks, don't play much of anybody until that point. I think you get to that point, that's when I really start to take it very, very seriously.
Yeah, which is why I'm still not going to throw Kentucky out just
Yeah,
yet because
likewise.
there's always that potential that they make their run in February.
Hey,
You,
Kentucky could get to March and not look good and sneak in the tournament and still win the whole thing.
yeah, I don't know if this team has that kind of upside, but yeah,
But what were we saying about Arkansas this time a year ago?
well, no, you're talking about winning the whole thing though. Like that's you can't pick them again this year, Chris, because we remember what happened last year when you picked them.
No, we
So,
do.
no, but yes, obviously, yeah, I understand what you're saying. It's long way to go. Let's just call it what it is. Our power rankings are our power rankings. They're not an exact science, but it's fun for discussion leading into a new week. And yeah, so there's that's a nice top tier. I think you've certainly seen some teams set themselves apart, and I think when you look at kind of NCAA tournament projections, you got a good group there. I think that's starting to do some things well, and some other teams that still got a lot of work to do. So.
Okay, thanks for watching our channel. We, again, are Southeastern 14 presented by Steaks. If you like what you saw, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. That helps us out. We'll have predictions on Tuesdays and Wednesdays games coming shortly, maybe even some wrap-ups of today's bowl action if we got some time. He's Blake Lovell. I'm Chris Lee. We're Southeastern 14 presented by Steaks. We'll see you again soon.